The Missouri District would like to do everything we can to support pastors, especially in times of disaster. So this time together with us is a time where we're going to think about the spring storm season coming up and what pastors need to know and what pastors need to do and how they can respond and get ready. So we are glad that you are all here and would love to support not only those that are on here live today, but also those that are going to be watching this. We're recording this today so that we can share this across the Missouri District, especially for those that are in administrative roles for ministry, churches, and schools. And so let us begin with a word of prayer and we'll get rolling here. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks and praise you provide for us through your Son, Jesus Christ, who conquers sin, death, and the power of the devil, who is also the Lord of each day, especially in times of disaster. You've given us things to do and a Christian vocation of various kinds for us to interact with our community, especially during times where we need to support one another like these. So, Lord, we ask for your blessings upon our presentation today and for all those that are preparing for this spring storm season for ministry and for your sake. In Jesus' name, amen. So again, thank you for being here today. We've got some special guests. We've got Kris Schuldt. Schuldt is our DDRC, our Missouri District Disaster Response Coordinator, and also Tom Keel. He is one of the people that Kris leans on, and we actually depend upon boots on the ground for people that are leading the charge during times of disaster response. So we'd like to share a little bit about our agenda for the day. We've got about an hour and a half, 90 minutes or so. We might end a little bit early if we can. But let me share with you what our plan for the morning looks like. So we've got just a little bit of welcome here. Also, we're going to report on the prevalence of storms and disasters, especially in 2025. We'll have Kris Schuldt report how we've responded to all those storms and how much we had to deal with there. Then also, we're going to report how pastors have guidance and support and working with congregation members during those responses and how that specific role is key to that ministry. Then also we'll have some presentation of documents, some bullet point lists, and some things that you can download from the chat box. And then also those are also found in the training manual, which we will share with you as well a little bit. Then we'll have some discussion with those that have been involved in these things. Tom Keel will be sharing a little bit, and then I think we've got a couple other things we might share with you just as we can. We have the dashboard of the LCMS LERT website that will share how we communicate during times of disaster from the district and how those support systems all sort of work together, especially when it comes to financial resources and supports going out. And then we'll have a discussion of the deployments, how that works with other administrators and ministry leaders, and some Q&A and the like. So with that in mind, I will stop that screen share, and then we'll go on to let Kris talk about the prevalence of the of storms and how that whole thing worked, especially in 2025. So, Kris, thanks for being here today. Tell us a little bit, what were you dealing with during 2025?
Oh, it was kind of boring. So normally we have in Missouri, in regards to alert, maybe one tornado we have to work on, and we may go to a place and maybe cut up, 3 to 5 trees over a weekend, and we're done. This 2025, we had 120 tornadoes in Missouri, and our alert teams worked on 12 of them. And I'm going to share this Excel spreadsheet I put together. Um,
I think I heard you say that Missouri was the third highest storms last year, something like that.
Yeah, I've got a map of the United States, and it shows. I think Texas had was first with a number of tornadoes. Illinois was second, and Missouri was third in the country for a lot of tornadoes. Uh, so we worked on 12, and what you see on your screen is a list of all of the volunteers and how much time they put in. And so the first one I've got there is Concordia Seminary. We had 185 trees there, and the volunteers from
185 trees?
185 trees, yeah. And
That's amazing.
they were all big. They were like in the 2 to 4 foot diameter size. Um, and volunteers from 5 different states worked 1,086 hours over 12 days to take care of that. Um, Actually, that's not right. It was 1,561 hours. Then we had a tornado in Perryville, and volunteers worked 216 hours. We had a tornado in Lincoln, and we were there twice. We worked
Yeah.
64 hours on the first weekend and the second weekend. Uh, it'll come up here in a minute. But in Springfield, we had volunteers from 3 states work 465 hours. And in Springfield, we stayed at the Lutheran uh, campus ministry building. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but that's where I housed all of the volunteers. Then in Arnold, we went there a couple of times, so that was 353 hours on the first one. Potosi, we had only 34 hours. Then we went to Rolla, 225. We went back to Arnold for another 24. Um, let's see, we went to Saxon Lutheran Memorial in Frona and worked 239. Went back to Concordia and did stump grinding, and we had 112 hours of that. And then we did a cemetery tree for Emmanuel St. Charles. They've got some old trees that were rotting and in danger of falling on tombstones, and so we've cut out 5 trees there so far. And then we've done some what we call local missions of mercy. We helped with repairing drywall in South St. Louis. There's a group of Lutherans from Nepal, and we worked on a fence that was down, and then a tree went put a hole in a roof, and we fixed that drywall. That was about 18 and 24 hours. So in total, we worked 3,362 volunteer hours just on disasters and missions of mercy in Missouri.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's completely an anomaly because we don't normally do that that much work.
I do remember a time when I first came to serve with the Missouri District that we were sort of waiting around for disasters to happen. And we were doing a little bit of training, and then the pandemic happened. And then, of course, we couldn't meet there for a while. But, so this is a very unusual season. Can we expect that to happen in 2026, do you think? I know you're not, you don't have a crystal ball and you're not God, but what do you think?
So everyone I've talked to expects it to be somewhat similar to last year because all of the conditions are the same like it was last year at this time. Uh, all the weather things lining
Okay.
up.
So one of the things that I would like to, discuss here and kind of right off the bat is why are we inviting pastors to think about this? What is the specific reason that pastors need to be involved in disasters? Tom, if I can have you unmute and just discuss that a little bit from your angle.
Yeah, it's really knowing a little bit about the program, that the Senate does have resources. I know this crowd may know about it, but we've ran into situations where the pastors may say, "Well, gee, I didn't know we did all this, right? I didn't know we had these teams ready." And I think independent of you're hit by some tornado in your town or anywhere nearby, There's plenty of just preparedness at a congregation level that needs to happen, just for continuity's sake. It's one of those disasters we talk about when we're in the training. What would happen if you lost your treasurer? He was incapacitated for a month. What happens if it actually is a disaster that hits a tornado that does tear into your physical building, a fire? What do those plans look like? So, general awareness and knowing that there's a crew out there to assist with that's good, and then just kind of instilling it within your own congregation.
So one thing that I'll share from a person who has been LERT trained and FEMA trained, also trained as a police chaplain and the like. One thing that we did when we were in Scott City, we worked with the Ministerial Alliance congregations, and we had, as pastors, we facilitated a day that we pretended to respond to a disaster during a worship service time. And so we scheduled a day for the whole town. Of course, it was, a smaller town, but only about 4,500 people in town. So we worked well together. In any case, we had a day after worship service that we asked everybody to stick around for about 15 more minutes, and we pretended that a disaster had happened. A tornado siren had gone off during the worship service. And then we put together kind of this experience of where do we go? And let's go there and let's see what it's like to take the entire congregation during a worship service down there. So I gave the elders and the ushers permission to stop the worship service if there was a siren that had gone off during the middle of the sermon, because I found out in the discussion that they would not have done that. They didn't feel permission to stop the pastor when a tornado siren was going off into town. And there were examples of that in real life. Over in Illinois, I think there was a Methodist church that actually had its roof collapse during the sermon on the people. And and so, we wanted to really understand that these are real realities. And so we discovered, just as a practical thing, going down the steps to the parish hall basement, there were 4 people that we had to carry, including some elderly people that were only in walkers or wheelchairs. And then we also discovered that there was a wide hallway to get down there, stairwell, but we only had a handrail on one side. And because it was a wide stairwell, afterwards the trustees put a second handrail on the other side so that we could get down there efficiently and people had stability as they walked down there. So it was a very valuable experience. And just so thinking, that's why we've invited pastors here. We really want to make sure that pastors know what to do in a ministry setting when disasters happen, not just for themselves, their congregation, but also for their community, because everybody is going to be asking those questions of the leaders of the community. So, Kris, let's go back to you and let you talk a little bit about some resources you have, either from your PowerPoint, from the training of the LERT manual.
Okay. Before we do that, I do have a picture of a pastor in North St. Louis after that tornado there, and I wanted to share that for just a second. This is Pastor James from Chapel of the Cross in St. Peter's, and he is a LERT member. He took the LERT class, and we went around. We did quite a bit of stuff in North St. Louis, but here we're going around distributing food to some of the survivors down there. And I think it's important to note that he is very adamant that he wants to be part of anything that we do down there. So that was kind of a neat thing.
Also affirm that response down in St. Louis, where there was a tornado last year, the pastors at Bethlehem were in a massive response to their disaster. It hit their entire neighborhood. And so they were developing ways to feed the community. And they have developed a tremendous amount of connections to their community. And they have actually communicated to their community that the love of God is real. And these are the people of God. And this is how God's people respond to the needs of the community. So that was a very real example.
We work together as a team that's all trained, and every alert member, if we go into someone's house, has background checks and all that. But the nice thing is that here in Missouri, we have approximately 600 alert volunteers across the state. They're not all active, but they're there if we need them. And then across the country, we have 8,000 alert trained people. And the importance of that is that when something occurs, we can draw on the expertise and the help from all these other um, people. A good example of that would be when the tornado hit the seminary. It was on a Friday night, and it stopped the graduation ceremony. And I was told to put together a deployment there to clean up the chapel plaza so they could have their um, ceremony on Saturday night. And so we put out a deployment on Friday night, and 25 alert volunteers from 5 states was there by about 8 o'clock Saturday morning to help with that work. And that's the kind of neat thing that the alert provides. Um,
So
so
those people that were trained and poised and ready when they saw the tornado hit and affect people, they were much more readily available to respond.
Yeah, normally we can't get a response that quickly, but I think with the importance of it being the seminary and also it being you know holding up, all you guys have all been through this. You know that when there's a graduation, people come from all over the country. They fly in and get hotel rooms and all that. So there was a very strong reason why we wanted to get that done as quickly as we could. And with the 25 alert volunteers and 25 SIM students I had, we were able to take care of that by 3 o'clock and get the whole Chapel Plaza cleaned up for the ceremony. So, but that's the kind of thing that alert brings is we can respond quickly if we need to, but typically, it takes about a week or two to put a deployment together. So that was very good. So, um,
Very.
and we also work alongside of all these other groups. We don't work for them, but we work alongside of the Red Cross and CERT, Samaritan's Purse. But after disaster, um, we typically stay. The alerts teams are put together so that they can stay for a long time, and we're often the only group left after a couple weeks in a given disaster. There's different phases of the disaster. There's the rescue phase, which we don't do. There's the relief phase, and then there's the recovery phase and rebuilding phase. That's the ones that alert really stands out on. Um, we do have to be cognizant of FEMA because once they come in, they usually have different rules that we have to follow, which is okay because they want us to be safe, but we take care of that. And then the reason why alert exists and the reason why we do this is because of these two, not just these two, but these two passages, which you guys are probably very familiar with, um, is something that we talk about in the training, but we also talk about it every morning when alert team gets together to start work. We talk about safety, and we also do a devotion. And these passages always get brought up. Oops. Um, but once again, we don't save the day. We just show mercy. We consider alert to be a mission of mercy and a mission of presence. And then we work with all these survivors, the direct survivors, the indirect, the hidden survivors. And then this chart shows the emotional phases of a disaster. And we see it almost all the time in the people's faces. If you look to the right there, where it shows the anniversary reactions, and then the line starts going up, that's in the reconstruction phase. That's when we're there and we help people to start slowly getting out of their grief and their PTSD. But we are a ministry of presence as well. And it's a clear testimony of the gospel, not just in deed, but also in word. And you guys are very aware of that. And that's a pastor on the far right and a DDRC that says LCC staff on the left praying with homeowners. And we do a lot of listening out there. We're taught to listen and to let the people cry and get it all off of their shoulders. But these are the things that the LERT teams will do and bring to we call them survivors and not victims of a disaster. But and then we also tell everybody how not to provide care. We don't say stuff like you see there on the left that might be misinterpreted. And the first item in all of our discussions about how can someone help, and it's prayer. And then we do the outreach and we do all these other things at the same time. But what do other area churches already offer? That's something that we always make sure we're aware of when we get into an area, because we don't want to overlap. If they've got a food truck, we don't want to bring a food truck down type of thing. We want to bring what the gaps are. And our teams do whatever it takes to help. A lot of times you'll see the chainsaw teams, because that seems to be the big fun thing for men to do when they're retired, is to play with chainsaws. But we do a ton of other things. We rebuild decks. We just rake up yards. We muck out basements. We do whatever it is that has happened in that disaster. If within our capability, that's what the alert teams will do. And then we do all of this for free. So we never ask for a donation. We never ask for a anything in response to us helping them. But if anyone wants to donate, then we set up something at the local church or at the district level so that they can donate to LERT, and then it helps cover some of our expenses when we're down there. I think that's basically, Marty, what I was going to present out of that
Excellent.
presentation.
Okay, excellent. Keep in mind we've got some Q&A time here coming up. So if you've got some questions about different things that Kris, sort of breezed past, we'll be able to discuss those as well. So let's move on to Tom just a little bit. Again, coming back to what's your experience, Tom, as a volunteer, and what's your role in the LERT here?
Yeah, so I've been with the program 3 years total. I first year got some training, and it was sort of a, hey, we ought to support some kind of a team, but we didn't know how to get started, right? So took a full year before we said we're just going to go to one of these deployments. Once you get trained, you're in the system, and we're just going to go learn what the other teams do and plug in. So the last 2 years, I've been plugging in to different deployments. We don't have a large teams, just primarily 3 or 4 of us that will go to these deployments. And then to help grow it in the Kansas City area, I decided I would go ahead and become an instructor for LERT as well. So I'm available on this end of the state to help out and do some of the training, get people more aware. But primarily, I assist Kris wherever it's needed. If he needs to, have us plug in anywhere. We also have some, involvement from our congregation that aren't necessarily LERT trained. We have them help, like our Sunday school group, or we'll put together our flood buckets that we'll take out to disasters, or including we shuttle them across the state. In fact, other disasters, they don't just have to be here local. So again, I'm kind of a new guy to it. Our goal would be continue to grow the base of folks who are doing storm cleanup, and just see where it takes us. There's, if you looked at teams that, um, start with one guy and a chainsaw, we're kind of down on that end. Even the three or four guys that deploy don't actually all do it together. Sometimes I might go for 3 or 4 days. Another guy shows up 2 days later, and then there's larger teams that have trailers, skid steers to do all that kind of work. As was mentioned, there's food trucks, shower trucks. We're not quite to there, but we're just going to see how it grows over time. And then I think Kris can do this more justice. He mentioned some of those other projects that are out there, Missions of Mercy. We're going to try and grow some of those more kind of like local construction projects, lacking a better term. That's an area I think we'd all like to do, and assist folks where needed.
Excellent, excellent. So before we go to some discussion, Kris, can you tell us a little bit about how this worked during the response to Helene in the southeast of the United States?
So when that hurricane hit, they actually didn't know how much damage there was. And so the DDRC in North Carolina called me and asked if I could come down and help her because it was just overwhelming. She didn't know how overwhelming, but she said, I just can't get my arms around this. So I went down there, and we discovered that because of the way that disaster occurred with the hurricane winds and the was it 33 inches of rain in 24 hours they had. There's a substantial flooding so bad that even Interstate 40 was wiped out, completely wiped out for about 10 miles, which made it almost impossible to get there easily. And that meant that, all the supplies coming in to help and all of the other volunteers had to drive around like a 7 hour detour to get to the areas that were affected. And that hurricane hit, about a year and a half ago. And as they get back up into the mountains and start replacing bridges to get into other areas, they're discovering there are still, to this day, huge areas that have a lot of damage, trees down, houses missing. And um, when we when I got down there, I set up a LERT camp at St. Peter's Lutheran Church in Conover, North Carolina, and we all of the volunteers from about 8 or 9 different states would come there, and then we would send them out to the different areas we knew about, like Camp Lynn and some of the other places that had severe damage. And then Asheville really got hit hard, and a lot of buildings had been uprooted from their foundations and swept down the river. So we we helped with you know finding the where the disaster had the most effect. We had various um, houses that had flooded and other places where the trees were blown over because of the wind. So it was a wide mixture of different support we had to provide. And then in the midst of that, we had St. Peter's had a brand new pastor that just got out of the seminary and had way too much energy and probably drank way too much coffee. And he decided he wanted to build 10,000 flood buckets in their gym and then use their gym as a distribution point for that. And I thought that was kind of an outrageous goal, but we tried to help him. And so 7 days a week, trucks would pull up and we would unload all the supplies that are needed to put in flood buckets along with empty flood buckets. And then they had an assembly line inside the gym set up, and then we would distribute those right from that gym and in pickup trucks. And after 1 month of me being there, we had built 4,500 flood buckets and
Wow.
handed them out probably within 24 hours of them being assembled. So that was the need down there. But that's not all we handed out. We also received a lot of clothing because up in the mountains, those people had lost their houses And so they were sleeping in tents, and we provided barbecue pits and bags of charcoal so that they would have a way to cook food, and cases and cases of water, and cases and cases of diapers and blankets and all kinds of stuff for them to be able to survive through the through that time period.
So let me focus a little bit about what you said, the role of the pastor in that congregation. Um, one thing I do run into as a district worker is asking, what pastors are in the area of the disaster and which ones have the capacity to do what. So there's the initial assessment period that we're asking from an organizational perspective, who has capacity here.
Marty, would you mind if I kind of share
Yeah,
what
please do.
I do? So, disaster occurs, and it's my job, but not just mine, but the DDRCs all across the country. It's our job to call to find out which local Lutheran churches in that affected area. And my job is to call the pastor and then to meet with the pastor, find out what the needs are, and maybe even start up a list of all of the people that have been, in his congregation that have been affected. But I always ask the pastor, the first thing is he and his family okay? First. Second, is the church building okay? And the church facilities, have they suffered any damage? And do they have power and all that? And then I ask about the members of the congregation. And if there is going to be a deployment, then I'll meet with the pastor and we talk about where I can house volunteers, how I can get them food, how we can get fuel for their chainsaws, all that kind of thing. And then we come in with a group of, let's say, 20 volunteers over the course of a couple of weeks. And typically we will house them in a fellowship hall or a church basement. And we set up cots, and everybody tries to, accommodate themselves in that. And we find a place that's got a shower for them. And then, with the pastor's permission, we also attend Bible studies with the local group and attend. Basically, we become kind of a quasi member of that congregation. So, what occurs typically is that um, for the next couple of weeks, if you've got a lot of damage, that's what we come there to help out with, and we always help the pastor's family first, and then we help, repair the church building or get repairs for the church building if possible. And then if there's been several times when the parking lots in the church property have trees that have fallen down over the entrances, and so no one could get in or out. So obviously we clean that up real quickly because the church becomes kind of the focal point of the disaster response.
Yeah.
A question I get in every training is, do we only help Lutherans? And the answer is no, we don't only help Lutherans. We help everybody. We start with the Lutherans, and typically, I would say 75% of the people we help are non-Lutherans. They're members, they're neighbors and members of that community, that congregation. And we become an outreach for that local church, that local pastor. Because what I'll do is if any of those non-Lutherans ask, well, how can we learn more about, what you guys do? And that I always point them back to the local pastor and the local congregation, because when we all leave after those 2 or 3 weeks, the pastors and the church is still there. And a lot of times these other victims or other survivors uh, will come in and ask for more help from the local congregation.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So raise your hand if you do have any other comments or questions. Otherwise, you can put them in the chat box as well. Tom, let's go to you a little bit here. What's your experience when it comes to Kansas City and the new volunteers that you have been working with, new churches, things like that? Have you been able to get to know some of those folks? that are in your area and connect them to the LERT work?
Yeah. When we got started, it was, Kris knocking our door. And we had, a small handful, probably 10 people that attended the first training. And again, we sat there for a year, didn't do a thing, and then said, hey, we ought to get this thing going in earnest. So we held another training class. Um, we probably had 20 from my own congregation, and then another um, probably 15 from surrounding congregations. I had gone to the uh, circuit um, circuit meetings, three different circuit meetings, and kind of knocked doors and said, "Hey, here's what this is." I don't know that it brought in a ton of folks, but it did kind of start the ball rolling. Like I said, we started with nothing, and now we're building up, and I believe it's going to happen the same way, pretty much in any congregation. But there's at least one other congregation within 25 minutes of here that is trying to do the same thing and kind of build that critical mass. And that's what it really takes, is just getting one or two and getting started. You don't have to be a team with 20 people going out, your first year. And we'll grow over time. And I think a great model for that is what's happened in the St. Louis area, where they grow from just a handful of people working out of pickup trucks like I am, to having their own team, their own trailer, and then eventually they say, "Hey, we need more equipment. We can go handle bigger jobs." And then maybe two or three congregations will band together, and that just kind of grows. And again, every year we see folks that will say, "I didn't know we were doing that in my own congregation." Right? It kind of fizzles out. So that, my job is to make sure it stays front and center. Here's the money I've been given to my team by the congregation. Here's how we're using it. And yes, we'll take more volunteers as they come. But anyway, it's great to see it grow, and I'd like to see it grow more in this area. I think prior to us getting moving here, I think Concordia, Missouri was the furthest west in Missouri that there was a team. And since then, I think Pole Camp, Kris got a team going down there, have the one here in Lee Summit, one in Bethlehem and Raymore, and probably some more that'll get spun up here. I guess one down in Springfield too. So that's all within the last few years. It's really grown well.
Excellent. So one of the things that I've got in the chat box here is the LERT appendix pages 87 through 99. I'm going to share that right now and pull that up, and we can talk through what this resource is. All right. So can you see it there?
Yep.
All right. So it's in the chat box, so you can click on that and download it. Again, that is from the manual, the LERT training manual. So I want to encourage people to think about going through the training, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute with the schedule of available trainings. So this piece here that we have that is the family emergency plan. This is a critical piece. You talk about helping the pastor's family first when you go in there. If the pastor's family is prepared for a disaster, then they set the example for the congregation that we are not unaware that storms will happen, and so to be able to do ministry, it's important to be ready for these kinds of things. So this family emergency plan just gives a little bit of, I'm going to maybe increase this so you can see it. I might be on the wrong screen here. So Kris, you want to talk us through some of these resources?
Sure. What we've done in the back of the manual is to provide a way to organize these plans. There's the family emergency plan. There's also church worker plan, and a way to, let's say that you have a tornado go through your community, and all the cell phones and all the power is out. There's no way to communicate, and you know that you have 10 of your parishioners that are um, handicapped, and they can't get out of their houses. How would you go check on them? Do you have a plan in place? So with what Marty has here, this is a family emergency, but there's also a continuity of ministry plan attached with this. And what it does is you get together and you put all this, fill all this out, how you're gonna do this, how you're gonna check on all those people, and who's gonna do it. And typically, what people will do, there's the continuity of ministry. Um, everyone who's all the leaders, church leaders, the elders, or whomever, have a copy of this. You just have one master and a bunch of copies, and you fill all this in before a disaster. And then what you can do is, um, uh, in this plan, you can like where to meet and when to meet. So let's say the tornado hits on a Tuesday afternoon. You would say the next morning at 8 o'clock, be in the church parking lot with a copy of this plan. And if you could scroll down a little bit more, it's got a list of all the shut-ins, who the ministry leaders are, all kinds of different information that you wouldn't think about, different services or programs that you had um, scheduled. Do you suspend them or do you maintain them? And what do you need to continue these? And then what resources do you need to do that? And then a little bit further on, you've got the succession list for community ministry. So let's say that the senior pastor um, is out of town. Who takes over? Who makes the calls? Is the board of directors chair or the head elder? You got to have all these things listed and talked about before you do this. List of local emergency and government agencies. Most counties will have a disaster response manager assigned, and they're probably not active. But how would you find out who that person is if there's no telephones available? And so you do all this stuff ahead of time, and that's the whole purpose of this portion of the book, is to be prepared for the worst case scenario and hope that it never happens.
So, Kris, just as a interesting point of what you just described here, list of local emergency and government agencies. I just got a Facebook communication from the CERT leader that I met, I don't know, probably 10 years ago when we worked this plan when I was serving in a congregation. And, we still have that relationship of communicating together. So having this list of local emergency and government agencies means that I met with the mayor of our town, and I met with the significant other leaders in our town. That way, we knew what the communication plan was, the police chief, the fire chief, and other local leaders. That way, we have a relationship and we know what the plan is ahead of time. We have at that time where we were living, we have a train track that ran through the middle of town that carried hazardous material, and we all knew it. And so we considered what would happen if the train derailed in our town when there was this kind of material that spilled out or something like that. What would we do? So we talked about that as leaders in the community, and our congregation members had some discussion about that as well. So I mean, those are examples of what you just described. Important documents. One of the things that we had, the place where there was a historic museum kind of a thing, burnt down, and so many of the records from town went up in smoke. It was not fire protected. It wasn't smoke protected. All those things, they were sitting in an empty building at the time. So that was something we began to deal with in our congregation. We began to scan historic documents because we ended up with a photocopier that could easily scan those kind of things. Um, so, those are some different ways that we were preparing ourselves, and it gave our congregation and its leaders a sense of calm so that we could serve during a disaster as well. So, yeah, all of these things are ways. Kris, you had talked about missions of mercy throughout the year. So instead of sitting around on your hands waiting for a disaster to happen, um, tell us a little bit about how these ongoing mercies of missions of mercy help throughout the year.
So it's a relatively new category within the LERT program, and a local mission of mercy can be anything. It can be building a wheelchair ramp. It could be cleaning out a garage for a widow. It could be changing the batteries in smoke detectors. You could set up a day where the whole LERT group would get together and um, just go around the community and do, like the fire department does, changing out batteries. The local missions of mercy probably, the sky's the limit. As long as the group is capable of doing it, it can be anything that needs to be done. And yes, you could have your men's club do it. You don't have to have, the alert team do it. But when you have the alert team do it, if you come across things that you don't have the skill set within your church, and we make a deployment and in the system for you, you can attract members from other parts of the state to come and help. Um, for instance, we've got 7 people who do welding in this part of the state, and we've tapped into their resources. We've got one guy that did tile all through college. That's how he paid his way through college. And when we converted a bathroom from a standard bathroom to ADA compliant, he did all of the tile for us. So you can tap into other resources like that. And that's the kind of thing that Marty was talking about. Anything that's local that needs to be done, someone needs help with, um, can be done. A local mission of mercy that we just Chapel of the Cross just did. They had a gentleman that needed help to move out of his apartment into hospice care, and so they took their alert trailer and they filled it up with his clothing and his furniture, and they put it into storage and helped him move into a hospice center. So tons and tons of different ways to help out and basically keep the team active so that they're ready to respond, you know, when a real disaster happens.
And I would just reiterate anything that's handyman, general labor, electrician, carpenter. I had a guy up rebuilding a pastor's basement up in Iowa for 3 weeks, right? So that was related to that. Kris re-drywalled 60 basements in the St. Charles area, right? And that was a very long-term project. So those were definitely related to the actual storm itself, but those same sort of things happen. A fire at somebody's home, is that something we have resources we could deploy, and they would be happy to help with that person, happy to go clean up their backyard that's overgrown. Um, some of that takes a little beating the bush, but it's out there, and we know that we have people within the congregation that are both LERT trained and not LERT trained that would be able to assist with those things.
Yeah, the alert training gives a tremendous amount of resource. One of the questions here in the chat box was how to get a hold of the manual. Um, Basically, you go through the alert training, and the manual comes with the training. Kris, you've got a list of training events that are coming up. Can you share with us what those are?
So typically what happens is I'll get a request to do a presentation, alert presentation, um, and they usually turn into requesting a class after that. And as being as part of my role as a DDRC is to um, set up classes and ensure that we have instructors and all the books and all the other stuff for the class. But I'll give you an example. If you look down there at Coal Camp, St. John's Men's Club, I did a LERT presentation there on Sunday night at their men's club. It's about a 45-minute presentation, and there were two of the local pastors um, in that presentation, and they both asked if I could come back and do a training class, LERT training class for the combined area there around Coal Camp. I think there's 3 or 4 churches there that's going to do that. So you'll see a little bit further down on that spreadsheet that there's classes that are scheduled, classes we've already done, and we also have chainsaw classes that we do, and then we've got a couple of other things we're doing at the seminary. We're doing another chainsaw maintenance class, and then we're also going to be doing more stump grinding out there. But so basically, the way it works is that the local pastor will either send me an email or give me a call, and we'll talk through what day is good for me to come, or Tom, or I've got two others that will be able to help out with that. But it's a 3-hour class, and typically we do it on a Saturday morning from 9 to noon, and then we usually have a lunch, and we have coffee and snacks, and then either Tom or I or one of the others will come, and we have a set PowerPoint that we use. It's got a couple of videos from some of the synod leaders, and then we also hand out some other basic information during this class. It's pretty basic, but it explains what LERT is, why we do LERT. It explains how the teams are made up, and then like Tom said, um, you sit back and you think, now, what are we going to do to be part of a LERT team? Are we going to be, drywallers, after floods? Are we going to be chainsaw operators, or are we just going to do local missions of mercy? Or are we going to do a food trailer? There's a lot of different things teams can do. And I encourage people to not decide right at first. I encourage them to do just like Tom said, uh, go to several deployments and just see what it's like, and what your expertises are. If any of you would like either a presentation or like to set up a class, you would just contact me, and I can talk you through the whole process. And the classes have been $35, and that includes receiving the book, receiving a ID, a certificate, and a T-shirt. It also includes paying for the expenses of extra donuts and a lunch type of thing.
Okay. So what I have done here while you've been talking is to show them the dashboard for the LERT website. That way we can get them directly connected to this. So I am gonna go back over to the PowerPoint.
While you're doing that, I find it interesting that my emergency sirens are going off outside my window here. So
Really?
you can hear that. Oh yeah, 11 o'clock
Yes,
every first Wednesday of the month, right?
that's right. Okay, I think I'm sharing the right screen here. Can you see the website here?
Yep.
All right, so this is the LCMS website. I'll click back just so we can see where I started. This is under the category of disaster response and training resources. And so I clicked on that, and then I go down here to the bottom, and I click on lcms-lert.org. And then it pops up automatically here that I'm signed in. I believe. Maybe. Yeah, it looks like I'm already signed in. So when you sign in, then you have this website. Kris, you want to talk us through what are we seeing here?
So it'll have all the upcoming trainings and deployments on it, and there is a screen if you I don't see it. I don't see it on yours, where you can click on just for the state of Missouri, because
Yep,
this
all
has,
the districts, all the districts.
yeah, all the different districts, and you can click on your own state, and then it'll give you
We got to
information
click on
on,
all the districts.
yep. But you click
Because I,
on your district, and then you can get the information of who the DDRC is, the email, and contact info, and you can
there he is.
see.
So there's
Yep,
Kris
yep,
smack in the middle. So look for our logo, the little green emblem there, and you can see all the different trainings and deployments that are available.
yep,
So here in Frona, I could click on that one and it could bring it up as, um, see, this is a deployment, local alert team event. And then this one is a basic chainsaw training here in Raymore. I'll click on that one. And then you can see what's available there.
yeah. Hopefully, if when you click on those, if we've done our job right, it'll have all the information that you need to be able to know what to expect in that training or in that deployment.
Okay, so obviously that one is not for everybody. That one is one for those that are looking to do chainsaw training. So that's a little bit more advanced here. I don't know what's going on in Concordia, Missouri, but let's click on that. St. Paul Lutheran Early Response Team will be hosting a one-day mercy effort on the February 14th to help fell and remove 2 trees, and volunteers are needed. So the nice thing about the training is that it helps people understand what are these PPE things that they should be wearing, how can they protect themselves while they are helping. It's a critical piece of why LERT is engaged in training so many people. We want to make sure that people are safe. And then we have this one here in Frona. You see all the details there. Volunteers should be between ages 18 and 100. Okay. It is definitely outdoors. All
Yeah.
right. They are to wear their yellow alert shirts or vests. And when people go to a disaster and they are alert trained, and the residents or the people that are there, survivors, and they see that people are trained, it gives them confidence that these people aren't just fly-by-night folks. They also are assured that we've done our due diligence to be there, prepared, and know what we're getting ourselves into as best we possibly can, of course. Okay, so participants, as a pastor, you can get participants engaged by sharing this information, and that way they can be prepared as well.
And if I could add to that, another purpose or benefit of the training, basic alert training and the chainsaw training is when we have a deployment and we get teams from other states come in to help us, we know we're guaranteed that they've gotten the same training that we have, the exact same basic training, the same safety training in the chainsaw class. And so, it makes our job as site supervisors a whole lot easier knowing that everybody is going to be working safely the same way.
Okay, Tom and Kris, we're kind of wrapping things up here. Anything else you want to focus on with regard to how pastors can be ready for the spring season?
Yeah, I'll jump in here and I'll tell you what I told the different circuits as I went to visit them. If you do nothing else from my visit or this visit, the information that was flashed up on the screen, I think it's in the chat, that document that says, here's the disaster preparedness plan for our church, hand that to your, your president of the congregation and say, we need to get somebody on this. Going through the training, we would have never done that at my own church until we had been trained. And then I also do the audit for my church about every other year. And it's kind of a financial audit, but this is absolutely part of financial operations. What happens in case of a disaster? And disaster, as I mentioned earlier, could be our church secretary's out, right? They process all the checks. What is our continuity plan? So at a minimum, you need to take that document, get it printed out, and you pin it on your congregation president and say, we should discuss this at church council this month, right? We should have some basic things in place. And I put that on our president last year, and I know they went and did something, and I got picked again to go do the audit, and I'm going to see what they put together. I didn't go push on it. But the other thing I would say is, those, let's just say 3 to 4 guys, probably those 3 to 4 guys that are in your congregation that are very handy. They're probably your chairman of the board of properties or something like that, right? They may actually be a little bit tired of getting tapped on for everything all the time. They should know that this resource is available to them too. They're going to go remodel that bathroom. They're going to take care of that mold. They're going to go trim those trees, and all of a sudden it flies out of your budget for the congregation. Instead of tapping folks that do this for free, a single tree can cost you $3,000 to $4,000, and that might be cheap depending on where you're from. So just know that these resources are out there, and at least get one person from your congregation that's looking at, hey, maybe I'll go to this training and see what it's all about. So that would be my input back to this team.
Outstanding. Thank you, Tom.
I'd also like to add, and Marty, you'll be able to talk about this better than I, but another aspect of LERT and what I do is when I meet with that pastor that just went through a disaster, um, I always offer, to get help for him if he needs it. Obviously, I'm not trained or anything to do the help, but part of my job is to ask the question, do you need help? And I have been able to get help like in a long-term 4 or 5 week disaster or deployment. I've had a couple pastors, local pastors, rural pastors say, I'm just exhausted. If I could get someone to come in here and help me do, home visits or maybe to preach on one Sunday. I know the circuit visitors, that's what they do too. But if if that's not working, what we do is we will try to find someone to help if a pastor needs help, and that's a very uh, low key type important thing that LERT has to offer that we don't talk about very much, but it's there.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, unless we're going to discuss any more bullet points, I think we can kind of close up in a word of prayer, and especially thank Tom and Kris for presenting and being our guest stars for the day. And for you pastors that are either retired and supporting or active, thank you so much for engaging with this and working on being prepared for your ministry. So let's close in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank and praise you for providing for us. We ask that you would continue to provide, especially the encouragement that we need during times of disaster, but also as we prepare for those things as we await your return. Heavenly Father, we commend ourselves into your care, trusting in your mercy in Jesus' name. Amen.